Today, we're diving into a family tragedy out of Florida that honestly, it raises some really profound questions. Questions about trauma, about what justice really means, and about the incredible, sometimes unbelievable, love a parent has for their child. I mean, that one sentence says it all, right? It just perfectly lays out the impossible, heartbreaking situation a father named Vladimir Koval found himself in. It's a choice no parent should ever have to make, caught between his own mother and his own daughter. So this all goes down in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida. For the Koval family, this was supposed to be their safe place, a fresh start, far away from the war in their home country of Ukraine. But on May 23rd, 2023, Vladimir came home after a rare night out, and the sanctuary he'd built had become a scene of just absolute horror. Let's start right at that moment of discovery. What is, without a doubt, a father's worst nightmare coming true in his own home. And these are Vladimir's own words, straight from his police interview, just raw with shock. He walked in and found his 79-year-old mother, Yevgenia, on the floor, beaten so badly he couldn't even recognize her. And standing right there was his 14-year-old daughter, Sophia. So you've got Sophia, hysterical and covered in blood, claiming her grandma attacked her, that she was just defending herself. But that story, it just fell apart immediately. Her grandmother was frail. She needed a walker to even get around. And Sophia, she didn't have a single scratch on her. The evidence was telling a completely different story. To really understand how something like this could even happen, we've got to rewind a bit and look at this family's journey. Their path to America wasn't simple. It was pieced together over decades, and it was haunted by the very violence they were trying so hard to escape. Let's just walk through this timeline. Vladimir came here way back in '96 to build a life. 20 years later, his mom, Ivania, joins him. Then, just recently in 2022, Sophia arrives. She was sent here to get away from the war in Ukraine, but she brought all the invisible wounds of that conflict with her. And that right there is the deepest, most tragic irony of this whole thing. That apartment in Florida, that was supposed to be the safe harbor, a place for peace, for a fresh start. But instead, it became the place where a violence, far more personal and devastating than what they'd left behind, just exploded. Look, violence like this, it never just comes out of nowhere. In the weeks and months leading up to that awful night, the warning signs were everywhere. So now, let's take a look at the clear and frankly terrifying descent this teenage girl was on. And that's the million-dollar question, right? How did it get to this point? It wasn't some sudden snap. It was a slow burn, a steady decline that her father saw with his own eyes but felt totally helpless to stop.
And when you look at this list of behaviors, man, it just paints such a disturbing picture. These weren't just teenage mood swings. This was a full-blown crisis. Crying all the time for her mom, obsessing about the war, not sleeping. Those are textbook signs of severe trauma, probably PTSD. And then refusing to eat, having huge blow-ups over something as simple as cleaning her room, it shows a total loss of control. Her mind was just buckling under the pressure.
The story he told about them being at the pool, it's just chilling. He said they were kind of playing around, wrestling, and then suddenly it wasn't a game anymore. He could see real aggression in her. It's such a clear example of her losing that line between play and actual hostility. And here's a crucial piece of the puzzle. The problems didn't just start in America. Looking back, Vladimir realized the red flags were there even before she left Ukraine. She would tell these wild stories about drugs and being attacked, but there was never any proof. It really seems like the trauma of the war just threw gasoline on a fire that was already burning. And this is where it gets even more tragic. Her dad knew she needed help. He wasn't blind to it. He actually tried to get her into therapy, but even with insurance, he just couldn't afford the weekly appointment she so desperately needed. Okay, so that brings us to the aftermath. What does the justice system even do with a case like this? And how on earth does a father even begin to process his grief for his mother while still loving his daughter? The brutality of the attack is it's hard to even comprehend. Investigators figured out that she used her fists, then a belt, and then, in the cruelest twist imaginable, she used her own handicapped grandmother's walker as a weapon against her. So, in the end, legally, this is how it shook out.
Sophia took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter. The sentence was up to 3 years in a juvenile facility, and she'll be under court supervision until she's 21. And because she's not a U.S. citizen, the expectation is she'll be deported back to Ukraine when she's released.
But the most unforgettable moment of this whole case, it came from Vladimir himself. In court, trying to explain how he felt, he didn't talk about anger or revenge. He told this story, this powerful analogy about Noah from the Bible watching his own son drown. And that was his answer to the impossible choice. He finished the story by saying that if it were him, he would have reached into the water to save his child. Despite everything, despite the horrific crime, despite losing his own mother, his deepest instinct as a father was still to save his daughter. And so we're left with this, a story with absolutely no easy answers. It just lays bare the devastating ripple effects of war, the cracks in our support systems, and the unbreakable, sometimes incomprehensible bond between a parent and a child. And it just makes you ask, when a family is shattered this completely, what does healing even look like?